Hello, everybody. Welcome back to episode 3 of Uncontroversial Facts Only. I'm Korey,
I'm Kelsey.
and today we'll be talking about the Falcon Lake Incident. So, we also know that it's been quite a while since our last episode. There's been a lot of stuff going on, especially with COVID. It's been ramping up, and we've just been really busy, but we'd also like to announce that we'll be coming out with 2 episodes every month. So, look forward to our comeback.
Yes, we are going to be committed to this 2 per month, and everyone stay safe with COVID.
Yes, so we're going to start with an alien counter story. This was sent to us by a fan, and we're going to anonymize them. So we're going to call them Bob. And so I'll get right into reading it, and we'll give our reactions after. So I've had many personal experiences with aliens, but one of them in particular I had recently. It was a dream, and in the dream there was a war going on between these two species. I believe they represented humans and aliens. At the end of the dream, the alien side had a double agent who escaped the vintage we put them under. They looked around and said, "In this new world, we had hoped to learn about the planet and how it works. Instead, we now know a new language and never to make that mistake again." After the dream itself, I woke up and saw a figure standing in the corner of my room. "Thanks for the language. We're using it well." It said in an accented voice. I have no clue what the accent was, but it sounded almost robotic or as if they were speaking with a tremor, but not, if that makes sense. I watched it walk out of my room and close the door behind it. I don't know what kind of alien it was, but it was rather tall. I'd estimate about 5 to 6 feet. I was laying on my bed, though, so this may not be accurate. Most of my life, I've dealt with aliens. My entire family has. I don't know why or how, but they want us to do something. My grandfather said he used to know what it was, but one day he forgot and was never able to remember since. So does my father, but he says he was never really sure in the first place. My sister is 3, and she talks to her star friends at midnight every night. I don't know what it is I'm supposed to do, but I do know if I ever figure it out, I might just have to write it down before I forget. Most of the time they come in my dreams, but this is the second time I've been visited while awake. The first time I was 9, and I got lost in the woods on my way home from a friend's house. It was getting dark out, so even though I had gone this route many times, I found myself unsure of where I was. The one thing I really remember is sitting down under a tree and crying because I thought I'd never get home when a hand was held out to me. I remember taking it, but after that memory, it gets a bit hazy. We were barely walking a minute, though, before we were at my house. I turned to thank the alien, but it was gone. And that's the conclusion to the story. So, Kelsey, do you have any thoughts,
Yeah,
initial reactions?
yes. So my initial reaction to this was fear, but that's because I'm scared to be contacted by aliens. Like them describing an alien standing in their room when they woke up is literally my sleep paralysis, like demon. Like I am so terrified to open my eyes because I'm scared it's going to be a human or worse, an alien. And they just described that and they were, but okay, so the thing is, since they sent this in writing, we can't ask them questions. That would be something that I would want to do is ask them, like, how did you feel? Did
Mm-hmm.
you feel comfortable? Did you feel scared? Did you feel happy? And then I guess I would also want to know, like, why did they feel that way? Like, are they just comfortable with the alien contact, or do they think that they used some kind of technology to calm them, like a calming
Mm-hmm.
device?
True, because I mean, I feel like I would have the same reaction as you if there was just something unknown in my room or like something I didn't know at all what it was. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure most people would have that reaction too. I'm sure they had that reaction that like they should be initially scared, but if they did respond back to us and said that they did not feel scared at all, I'm sure it was due to the alien because I don't know if even seems like they did not have enough contact to even be comfortable with aliens around it. They've only been contacted twice in person.
Yeah, but like at the same time, it doesn't seem like they're scared because it is like something normal with their family.
Mhm.
So I feel like I assume that they would be scared, but I don't know. What is this? Like a
A
listener
story.
story? Yeah, a
Yeah,
listener
yeah.
story from Bob. Bob, also thank you for sending this in, but if you could give us some follow-up information, I would appreciate it because yes, I want to know how you felt when you
Hmm.
saw the alien and also in your dream. Like what kind of emotions were you feeling while you were dreaming? But like,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I'm curious about the dream too, like especially the vintage. Like that is a word that I'm not sure how or like what what the vintage was
Yes.
because um I think we were talking about this for a while about I feel like it's important to know like this vintage and
Yes.
I feel like it could change our perspective about what this story or dream meant.
Yeah, I think I don't know what that is, and you don't know what that is. But yeah, we felt like I don't know if it's I don't know if it's a misspelling or we just don't know what this word means. But yeah, we are a little bit confused on that. I was looking, I mean, I was trying to think like what kind of alien could this be? And I know it's like kind of not really described, but because it seems like it's nice and helpful, I would to me that sounds like a tall gray, like with the stories that go around in my family. So, but at the same time, because it did acquire language, it sounds like, at least from this story, I'm also thinking that it could be a Nord and it could be like more undercover if it's like interacting with like maybe humans more on a day-to-day basis.
I was thinking of tall grays too, just
Yeah.
because already they had the description that it looked tall to them, like although they were on their bed and it might not be as accurate. But at the same time, I think in our research before, grays were associated with like being the scientists of the aliens. Like they were out there to like do experiments, seek out information. I feel like that sounds like very much like what in the story that they were, they wanted to learn about how the planet works and they acquired our language. So I still feel like I'm strongly for that it was a tall gray. Or maybe if it wasn't tall, it could have been a gray.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yes, I
But
agree with
I was
that.
also curious about the whole language. It seemed like you're thinking that I'm talking to Bob, like they're thinking that the aliens are contacting their family for a certain reason. And so the alien is thanking them for the language and that they're using it well. So to me, I'm assuming that they fulfilled their purpose. Like I think language, their purpose of the family was getting our human language.
So, yes, I think you're right. I think based off of the dream, it sounds like it was fulfilled. But they're still interacting with the sister, which me and Korey talked about this earlier, and you need to put your little sister to bed.
That's very true. I was like, what 3-year-old is about midnight talking? Like you I want you to, get an audio recording, send that shit to us. We need to examine this for ourselves because she better not be saying goo goo gaga because if there's some real big words coming out of her mouth, I'd be very suspicious.
She needs to be in bed at midnight. So you guys need to watch her and keep her there. But no, more seriously, I do have a question about the interactions that your family does experience. And I want to know if it stops or it decreases as you get older. Like, does grandpa not experience them anymore and now it's the 3-year-old? Because I think at least from like stories that I've heard, they interact with children and then I don't know if it's like you fulfill your purpose or you don't, and then they'll stop. Like from what I've heard, they interact with children and they stop when you get older.
It
So
kind
I
of
want to
might be like the whole like belief of Santa Claus, where as when the younger you are, the more I don't want to say naive, but like the more you believe in like things that aren't explained, and so as you get older, you get all this new knowledge, and you in a way could, I guess, explain unexplainable things or like fill them with explanations on your own because like now you have a more knowledge about how the world works
know.
that like maybe aliens are like your brain has been tainted so we don't want to interact with you anymore as you get older. That was kind
Yeah.
of what one of my thoughts were.
Mm, yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So Thank you again, Bob, for your story, and we would like to hear from more of our fans. We know that there's a lot of international ones, and we've actually been talking about how we actually want to learn more about international aliens. Like, what are like alien encounters like in like other places other than the US? Because a lot of the, I guess, more popular cases we've seen happen in the US. And
Hmm.
so please send us any stories, any encounters that you've experienced over at uncontroversialfactsonly@gmail.com. And so I guess we're going to get started with our episode now. Falcon Lake
Yes.
Incident.
Yes. So today we're going to talk about the Falcon Lake incident. It's actually, okay, so it's a North American UFO encounter, but it's actually in Canada, Corey, okay? We're
Yeah,
not just doing US cases.
that's true. But I feel like they're just so close to each other. It's almost to me as if it's not as international. Like, no, I'm not
Yeah.
talking about like a whole nother continent.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. It's very close. It's actually located on the southern border of Canada, so it's
Hmm,
almost like so
even
close to
closer.
the US. Yeah, so so close. Yeah. So the Falcon Lake incident, it's very famous. I think if you are looking, like if you know about UFOs, you know about the Falcon Lake incident. I had never heard of it, I think, until I like stumbled across it and I was like, Corey, this seems interesting. And that's why we're working on this.
True. I've never heard about it until you basically told me.
Yeah. But it's about a man, a pretty regular guy named Stefan Michalak, and he was an industrial mechanic, and his life was like his and his family's life was changed by this encounter. May 20th, 1967 started out as an ordinary day for 51-year-old Stefan Michalak. He enjoyed prospecting for metals and wanted to take advantage of the Victoria Day long weekend. He took the bus to Falcon Lake, Manitoba, a region near the southern Canadian border, 152 kilometers or about 94 miles east of Winnipeg. Michalak released a 40-page manuscript titled My Encounter with the UFO later that same year. This is how Michalak described that morning and the events that followed. It was 5:30 a.m. when I left the motel and started out on my geologic trek. I took with me a hammer, a map, a compass, paper, and pencil, and a little food to see me through the day, wearing a light jacket against the morning chill. The day was bright, sunny, not a cloud in the sky. It seemed like just another ordinary day, but events which were to take place within the next 6 hours were to change my entire life more than anyone could ever imagine. I will never forget May 20th, 1967. Stefan Michalak entered the bush, heading generally north in search of a suitable area to mine. He found a place and got to work. While chipping away at the quartz, I was startled by the most uncanny cackle of the geese that were still in the area. Something had obviously frightened them far more than my presence earlier in the morning when they gave out a mild protest. Then I saw them, two cigar-shaped objects with humps on them about halfway down from the sky. They appeared to be descending and glowing with an intense scarlet glare. As these objects came closer to the earth, they became more oval-shaped. Suddenly, the farthest of the two objects, farthest from my point of vision, stopped dead in the air while its companion slipped down closer and closer to the ground and landed squarely on the flat top of a rock about 160 feet away from me. The object that had remained in the air hovered approximately 15 feet above me for about 3 minutes, then lifted skyward again. Then my attention was drawn back to the craft that landed on the rock. It, too, was changing in color, turning from red to gray-red to light gray, and then to the color of hot stainless steel with a golden glow around it. After recovering my composure and regaining my senses to some degree, I began watching the craft intently, ready to record in my mind everything that happened. Michalak took the time, approximately 40 minutes, to sketch the aircraft and take notes. At this point, he assumed he was looking at a Canadian or an American aircraft. He thought perhaps they were having mechanical trouble. He wanted to offer his help. He shouted toward the craft in English, Russian, Polish, and German. There was no response. He walked forward to take a closer look. The aircraft seemed to hum, and there was a sharp sulfur smell.
So I actually had an interesting thought. His initial thought or like perspective of this aircraft was that it was cigar shaped, and I feel like we've definitely heard that many times. Like as to how people had described what these unidentified objects looked like. Like I think in Mona's story, she had used cigar-shaped object, and then I think even in some of the other research we've done with like Betty and Barney Hill, I'm sure they've also used the same description. So I just want to say it's interesting that it's very synonymous to what a lot of people have been saying.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those that it's like because of the distance, it kind of takes more of like a yeah, cigar shape, and as it gets
Hmm.
closer, you can see more of the detail and
Hmm.
yeah. I approached the craft again and touched its side. It was hot to touch. It appeared to be made of a steel-like substance. There were no signs of welding or joints to be seen anywhere. The outer surface was highly polished and looked like colored glass, with light reflecting off of it. It formed a spectrum with a silver background as the sunlight hit the sides. I noticed that I had burned my glove I was wearing at the time when I touched the side of the craft. Michalak thought he heard voices, at least two distinctive ones. He could not make out what they said. He peered into an opening of the craft, but saw only bright lights. The door quickly shut and the craft began to rotate. He could see vent holes on the aircraft, and upon its takeoff he was hit in the chest with a jet of gas that set his shirt on fire. His face was protected by the welding glasses he regularly wore while prospecting. He removed his flaming clothes and stomped out the fire. When he looked up to see the aircraft, it quickly disappeared. Somehow my desire for prospecting had vanished. I decided to go over to the landing site and make a thorough inspection of the place where the craft had touched down. As I approached the site, I felt nauseated and my head began to ache. The spot where the craft had come to rest looked as if it had been swept clean with a broom. There was no debris of any kind on the rock, no twigs, bits of stone, nothing. It had all been piled up in a 6 inches deep circular mound about 15 feet in diameter. As I stood there examining the spot, the pain in my head became more severe. Waves of nausea increased and I broke out in a cold sweat. I knew that something totally unnatural had happened to me, and apparently it was having adverse effects on my physiology.
I would see. Is he just an extremely brave man, or like if this was you, would you even go up to examine this thing, or?
I think it was in front of him long enough where it was just like curiosity got the better of him.
Because
Yeah.
I agree. I would definitely take a picture. Like he was making a sketch, but like nowadays that we have phones and stuff, I would actually take like videos or pictures of this aircraft. But I don't think I would be brave enough to actually like make my way to the object and like start peeking through and like touching when I'm not supposedly supposed to be touching stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, he thinks it's people.
Mhm.
And so he's like, I guess I would be scared because if it's like some unknown military aircraft, I would be scared because I don't know who it is.
Yeah,
But he, I guess, is just like a helpful, curious guy. So I would say he was brave because I
yeah,
don't think I would do it.
exactly.
Okay. Michalak grabbed his jacket and tried to head back the way he came. I walked out onto the highway and discovered that I was about a mile west of the point where I had entered the woods that morning. I directed my steps eastward, hardly able to move my feet. I made some small progress, growing weaker with every step. The only thing to do was to continue walking. I made very slow progress. My stomach was still churning and my head was pounding like a drum. My only thought was to get to Falcon Lake as soon as possible. As I staggered along the roadside, I heard a voice calling me. Turning, I saw an RCMP constable. Briefly, I gave him an account of what happened, warning him not to come too close to me because I feared the possibility of spreading radiation. I asked about medical aid. Sorry, but I have duties to perform here, he said. I stared at him, unbelieving what I had just heard. He apparently did not believe a word of what I had told him, otherwise he would have acted differently. The constable
Mm-mm.
left me with my sickness and disappointment.
Oh hell no! That's what I have to say about that constable. Because like this guy got he got burned basically. Like his shirt and cap was set on fire, and he just like it seems like he's walking in a daze. Like I'm sure the constable, it doesn't seem like this guy Macaulay is normal at all, and for him to be like sorry, like I have. This is why we are defunding the like people are protesting to defund the police because of shit like this.
Yes. Well, there's actually the we know the officer side of the story. So, I mean, we can discuss that after, but yeah, right now
Mhm.
this is Michalak's point of view. So, Stefan eventually made it to a phone. He called his family and told them to meet him in Winnipeg. He took a Greyhound bus and was treated at the hospital for first-degree burns. He did not describe his encounter at the hospital, but later felt obligated by the fear that something could happen to someone else if he did not speak out. He began to tell his story to the Royal Canadian Air Force, the Canadian Forces, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the United States Air Force, the Winnipeg Tribune, and civilian investigators. Michalak quickly came to regret discussing his experience. The questions were endless, the probes unnecessarily personal. The news of what I had seen was spreading rapidly around the world. Articles appeared in newspapers and other publications. Some accounts gave validity to my story, others were quite skeptical. I was afraid, I think, of ridicule more than anything else. Press investigations did not stop at my home. Reporters went out to my friends and neighbors asking if they thought I was a stable person, whether I drank a lot, and whether I was the type who bragged and boasted a lot. Then came the official investigations, the RCMP and the RCAF. Men whom I did not know and never expected to meet came by my door. They had too many questions to ask. What was my domestic life like? Why was I in the woods at the time? Somehow, people seemed to have genuine interest in my experience, and I enjoyed talking to them. But by the evening following the incident, I was totally exhausted. I could talk to people no longer. I refused to answer the telephone. I tried to break off contact with the outside world. A few days following the encounter, Michalak drew the Royal Canadian Mounted Police a map of the site, being too weak and ill to escort them there. So what really happened out there that fateful morning? What did the RCMP find when they reached the site? Korey, let's talk about the evidence.
There's a lot of evidence we need to be discussing.
All right,
So, is there
so yeah.
anything in particular that you want to talk about first?
I mean, we already brought up the police officer. So the police officer did make a like a report on his encounter with Stefan Michalak.
Yep.
And he okay, so what Michalak has going for him is that the police officer says, I did interact with him.
Mm-hmm.
There was something wrong with him, and he was in this area when he says he was. So like that is all good, and that it puts Michalak at least in the right place,
Yep.
and it puts him kind of sick. The bad thing is that the police officer, well, bad for Michalak, the police officer states that he appeared drunk.
Yeah.
He doesn't say that he is drunk, but he says he appeared drunk, and he says that so he describes Michalak as having bloodshot eyes, confused, frantic, and he says, I asked him what was wrong. I guess Michalak, I don't know, he just seemed like a crazy guy. But the officer also says, I did not tell him, like, no, I can't help you. He alleges that he tells him, can I take you somewhere for you to get help? And Michalak says that the officer says that Michalak kept walking away from him. Like, no, don't get close, don't get close. Which is something else that he says that he did, is that, like, I was scared to give him radiation poisoning.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes more sense. Because I'm just like, like side-eyeing this constable.
Yes, I know.
But at the same time, it's like, I feel like if he actually did do what Michalak said, like 100%, I feel like he could be also trying to cover like himself up and seem like a more responsible officer. Because if he just pretty much rolled up and Michalak is spouting some crazy stuff and he just like, boom, I got other shit to do, like I'm out, that obviously he seems like he did not do his due diligence.
Yes, I agree. So like the officer's not going to say, I saw some crazy guy in the middle of the highway and I just walked away from him even though I could have helped him. Like, of course he's going to say, I offered to help. So that's what the officer's account. But at the same time, like Stefan also, I don't know, I guess if it's not real, then he wants to make it seem like, well, maybe he has more missing time. And so that was like, oh,
Yeah.
nobody was able to help me. I don't know.
Yeah,
So
and plus Michalak was out of it, so like maybe he didn't remember everything. Like I'm sure it'd be hard to recall like how everything went down if like you were feeling headachy, nauseated, and you're like trying to make a trek back to wherever you came from.
yeah, that's true. And he didn't want to get close. So maybe
Hmm.
it was just like, oh, no, 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 I can't go with you. And then
Yeah,
the officer was probably like, okay. Or maybe the officer did make a comment like, I have other things I need to do. I can't deal with this
yeah.
seemingly drunk guy. Yeah.
Hmm. True,
Oh,
true.
and another thing to mention is that the officer does state in his report, quote, I could not smell the odor of liquor on Michalak. So he looked drunk, but he didn't smell any alcohol on him. So,
Mm. Probably like, oh, you're drunk, but like I don't think you're like so drunk that like your breath is like reeking of alcohol.
right, you're not like
Yeah.
blacked out, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. Not like
Yeah.
we know anything about that.
All right. So, the other big thing, I guess, is that Michalak did end up in the hospital. If I don't know if you
Mm.
want to describe some of the stuff that he had, Korey.
Yeah, so apparently not only did he like reek of this like people were saying it was like a sulfur, like burnt motor oil smell. It was like seeping out of his pores. He had these what they later concluded were chemical burn scars that were in like a perfect circular shape that resembles the little circular shapes of the from the aircraft that he had sketched out. So they were thinking that what people who believe this is a alien aircraft were saying is that those were like the exhaust pipes, like those circles, and they blasted the gas onto his chest, and it left the singes.
Yes. I recommend looking it up. Falcon Lake Incident, Stefan Michalak, burns probably, or even just Falcon Lake Incident burns, and you'll see it's like a grid-like pattern, and it's like on his chest. It's, I would say, very, I don't know, unique. I don't know. I think that that's something else is they, it's kind of unexplainable. No one knows what could cause that kind of burn in that kind of pattern.
That's true. Yeah, they
Yeah.
like the physicians they could not conclude exactly how that happened, and they just concluded it was chemical burns because they had no other explanation. Like they were just like, this is the most plausible explanation we can give you. Because at first they were trying to test for radiation. Like I thought they thought it was gonna be like a radiation burn, but they did his blood work and there were no. It came back negative for any type of radiation.
Yeah. And something else Michalak had that day was his sketches. So he sat down and he sketched the aircraft, and he had that on him the day of. So so that's the evidence on that day.
Hmm.
The headaches, and he had headaches, diarrhea, and blackouts for months. I think it was like a year and a half, about every 3 months it would come back.
Hmm.
And reportedly he smelled like sulfur for a couple weeks after the incident.
Yeah. Yeah. And
So,
those marks like they would flare up too with
mhm.
those 3 month periods of like him getting sick. His scars, they would get like inflamed and they just looked nasty. Think of it as like those once you get surgery, you have these like scars and the scar tissue is like it just doesn't look like normal skin and like those would like flare up. And so I guess that's like the imagery you can think of when you're thinking about these scars.
Yeah, I think well, the doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong with him. So in 1968, he actually went to a Mayo Clinic and in Minnesota, and they pretty much, I think, couldn't find a reason for his like persistent illness. And he also talked to a psychiatrist while he was there. And the psychiatrist determined he was of sound mind, and he didn't seem like he would make stories up like this.
Mhm.
So,
I mean, from what you've heard so far, would you agree with the psychiatrist? Like, I know we don't know this man personally, but like,
yeah.
I want to say I feel like he wouldn't make it up. Like, he has been saying that he never said that he saw any like extraterrestrial species. All he said was he saw this unidentified like aircraft. He saw these flashing lights. And it was just like it basically operated very strangely. Like it
Yeah.
was up in the air, it disappeared in seconds. Like things that we cannot explain ourselves with like the type of technology they had back then.
I think that he saw something, yes. And I think something did happen to him. I don't, I mean, yeah, I think based off of the technology that we have then, that we have now even, we're not close to what he describes he saw.
Hmm.
Like we don't have vertical aircraft like that. I think I read that we have like a hovercraft that can go up in the air, but it can't do what he described, like disappearing in seconds and taking
Yeah.
off like that. And the other thing is like it wasn't very loud. He said he heard like a humming.
Hmm.
So we have our jets, you can hear them break the sound barrier and shit. So this is not the
Yeah.
same thing. So like I don't know. I kind of lean aliens at least for that kind of thing. So
Because you're saying like the type of technology seems like too far in advance that like it has to be something that has exceeded our own knowledge base.
yes. But and I mean but that's just because he doesn't seem like someone who would lie. Like I guess something we could ask is like what motive does he have to lie?
Hmm.
And from what I saw, there were kind of three. So, or there's three theories. So, one is he was an alcoholic and he had been drinking the night before. The Royal Canadian Air Force investigation was kind of leaning that way, but um, it didn't really pan out. Like they from their investigation, they discovered that he had been drinking, I think like he drank like 3 or 4 bottles the night before. By noon, you're not affected by that
Yeah.
anymore, not to hallucinate and be blacked out.
Hmm.
So, and it's a far walk to the place where he says that it happened. So he couldn't have gotten there drunk, I don't
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Um, the other theory is that he wanted to scare people, keep them away because he liked this spot, this mining spot. But it doesn't sound like he went back, you know. It's not like well, he didn't go back to mine, I don't
Hmm.
think. It's
Hmm.
not like he said the story and then he was out there mining 2 years later or whatever. So,
That's true.
um,
Plus, I mean, although he was like a geologist, like as like a hobby, like I'm sure he wasn't the type to be like, this spot is mine, like nobody else could mine here. It wasn't like he had found something so rare and like that it needed to be kept a secret type of thing.
yeah,
Plus, it drew more attention that he brought to this area, like by coming out with this story. So I'm sure, like, if he just kept it to himself, not like people would be flocking to this spot.
yeah, it's true. And then he also did have like, but he did have shady activity. So he was told by investigators, do not go back to the site, or so the investigators say. Do not go back to the site. Do not touch anything. Take us there, or we'll go first, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And he ended up going back with a friend
Hmm.
before, and he picked up all the objects. Like his compass that he left, his jacket, his shirt, his glove, pretty much like evidence that he was there, he took with him. And I'm just like, okay, I could see how you go there and you like nature, so you're like, oh, I need to take this stuff. Like,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
mine, this is trash.
Yeah.
So you pick it up and you take it with you. I'm not sure if the investigators really did outline to him, like, we want to preserve the crime scene. Maybe he didn't see it as a crime scene, you know? So he was like, like, if something happened to me like that, I don't think I would see it as a crime scene.
Yeah. Or another perspective could be that he doesn't really trust the government as much either. That, like, once they take that stuff, like, he wants himself. Maybe he was also very curious as, like, am I able to figure out what happened to me that day? That, like, he wanted to pick up his stuff to kind of examine for himself now that he, I guess, would feel better
Hmm.
and be able to have a clearer mind as to and explain certain things better. But,
Yeah.
like, if the government comes in, takes basically all of the evidence, and like I'm sure they're not going to share with him like the little details as they analyze.
Yeah.
I
That's
feel like
true.
that could be another perspective.
And what he did, so he gave he gave his clothes and things to the RCMP crime lab,
Hmm.
and but he also gave some like soil samples and things of that nature
Yeah.
to ARPO, which is like a civilian group, and ARPO stands for Aerial Phenomena Research Organization. They were there really early on, and they tested some samples that Stefan gave them. So I think you might be onto something. Like he's like, I want my own investigation done.
Yeah, because like for me, like I think just for me personally, if something crazy like that was happened to me, I feel like I would want to know for myself. Like I don't want the government going out there and basically telling people like my side of the story,
Mm,
because I'm sure things can get construed and like they just could kind of make things up if like they feel like, oh, what if it was really aliens? We don't want this to become public, so instead we're just gonna frame it as if like you were crazy and this and that. I'm sure they would rather want to keep alien information more of a secret than your own well-being.
yeah, that's true. You don't know. I mean, well, the Canadian government is like really good about publicizing most of their paperwork.
Oh, true. I had not.
Yeah.
I was thinking more of U.S. I have no experience with Canadian military, but I'm sure
Yeah.
they are.
I mean, but also we don't know. Like maybe they omit some things, We don't know. Like maybe they just put some decoy stuff out. We can't really know, but they have a lot more information than the US government does. We know that for a fact.
That's true. That's true.
Um, During the time that it happened, they discovered, or when they tested this oil, they did have high counts of radiation. I think
Hmm.
it was, but they ended up determining that there was a vein of uranium nearby that is probably responsible. But
Yeah, yeah. Like they
yeah.
wanted to quarantine the area at first, but because it was due to the vein of radium, it was just like, no, there's no point in quarantining because they thought that, you know, whatever mysterious thing it was, it left the radiation, but
Yes.
it's actually just natural.
Yeah. And another thing that happened is a year later, Stefan goes back to the site again with a friend, and he discovers a radioactive piece of silver. It was super high quality, and it was kind of W bend shaped. It was found inside the rock, burned into it. They tested that and they found, yes, it's radioactive with uranium and radium,
Mhm.
but it just, I think they determined that it was kind of like sketchy.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah.
it was like a whole year later, like the initial investigation did not find this information at all.
Hmm.
And I mean, even after looking at through some documentaries, like one of Michalak's friends who like have, I believe it is one of the friends that he brought with him
Hmm.
to examine the area 1 year later, had said that he doesn't think Michalak planted this, but he does believe somebody else planted that to either make it seem more as if like, oh, there is like extraterrestrial like involvement, or they wanted to kind of throw off Michalak himself and be like, maybe one day down the road they know that it's a fake, and so they can blame Michalak and be like, your story. We know that you're just making this thing up because you
Yeah.
have planted this fake evidence.
Yeah, I was gonna say they planted evidence to then like say, well, you're the one that hoaxed it. This is evidence that you hoaxed it. Like you planted more. But yeah. I guess his son, I was reading about his son, Stan. He makes kind of, I think, a fair point of like, okay, I understand people don't believe my dad, that they think, he's a liar. But if you think it's so easy to hoax something like this, like you try. Like, you go out and you try to find a good quality piece of silver and you coat it with something radioactive and you leave it behind, burn it in the rock, get some burns on you, go to the hospital. Like, it's just like, why would someone go through this?
So true. Like if I tried to hoax this shit, my ass would be busted in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. I think it was another Canadian, oh, the Health and Welfare Canada. they're the ones that searched and tested Manitoba for radiation, and they like were determined to try to figure out where they, I mean, they found out that there was the uranium vein,
Hmm.
but they were trying to see like how much access does Stefan have to radioactive materials. So they were
Yeah.
looking at his work, they were looking at any like disposal waste sites nearby, they were
Hmm.
looking at medical facilities. They wanted to know if there was a way that he could pick something up and stage it, and
Yeah.
they determined that he didn't have easy access to this kind of thing.
Hmm.
Like no, most people don't. It wouldn't have been something um that he could have easily done, I guess.
True. True.
Yeah. So, um yeah, until his death in 1999, Stefan Michalak always maintained that he saw two unidentified flying objects, but he he thought that they were human. He never said, "Oh, that it was an alien that got me." He thought it was a Russian or US spacecraft, and
Mm.
he said, yeah, one of them burned me, and that's what happened. I guess like other people have come and tried to say, oh, or explain it in a way and put words in his mouth, but I feel like that's something else that makes him more believable, is that like he's just like, I never said that. This
Mm.
is what happened to me, and like somebody else can try to explain what happened because I don't even know what happened.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it was something that he was trying to do. Like, I don't think he was trying to hoax anything. So I think I'm gonna be one of those people that put words in his mouth. I think it is possible that it was an alien.
Don't quote us.
Don't quote me, but I think it's possible. I think that
No.
like there's some shady stuff here, but I think it's possible.
I honestly 100% agree with you. I mean, even his son has came out and said that I wish one day the government sends us a letter and tells us that, like, sorry that your father had interaction with one of our undercover like aircraft from back then, and like this explains everything to you. Like he wants that to happen because he doesn't want to, I guess, live in fear of like the unknown and also people heckling his
Hmm.
family that like, they think that all of this was a hoax and like they've just been carrying this like for decades.
Yeah. And I
But
guess like okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
but I was about to say, I definitely do agree that this is alien involvement because number one, if this was a secret military like project, why did they choose Falcon Lake? Like that place has been known for a lot of recreational activity. Like if that's right, snap snaps.
Snap, snap.
If you want nobody to see what was happening or have a glimpse of this aircraft, then why choose a spot that like there's people going to lakes with their families, there are people hiking, fishing, like it's a highly populated area. And secondly, the burnt metal piece that was like burned and melted into the rocks,
Hmm.
like they were saying that there's a certain temperature to the melting point of most metals, right? And they were comparing that to the temperatures of jet engines like back then, and it was nowhere near enough to like melt the metals to that point. And so
Mm.
it had to have been something that emitted a lot more heat. And so I just want to say
Yeah, you
that
think the
piece.
technology wasn't there. Yeah.
Oh hell
Oh,
yeah.
I also want to add that they have since done like Stefan's son Stan has with I think a childhood friend tried to look more into the story, and they found that allegedly there was a little girl in a cabin near Falcon Lake who
Yeah.
drew like an aircraft very similar. It looks very similar to Stefan's dad's drawing in crayon, either the day before, the day of, or the day after. Like in that 3 day time frame, she saw something like that. Of course, this is alleged because the investigators never went to go talk to people nearby to see if
Mm,
anybody else saw. So all we know is that nobody else reported it to the police. Like, oh, I just saw something flying in the air. But we do know that we don't know if the police would have asked people nearby if they would have been like, oh, you know what, there was something, but I didn't think much of it because I'm busy doing other stuff or something,
Mhm.
So
I mean, that's scary in itself because, like, even if they were to do that, right, I'm sure it's very possible that they could have missed the little girl because what if the little girl drew it, but, like, I don't know if she even told her parents. Like, do you think she would be like, hi, mommy, like, I saw this thing and I drew it, right?
that's
Like maybe
true.
the mom, when she saw the picture, she's like, "Oh, what is this?" And she could just be like, "Oh, something that's on the window." Like the mom would be like, "Okay, like it's just her imagination, right?"
Yeah.
And like the police comes and then they're like, "Have you seen anything strange?" The mom, I don't think the mom's gonna be like, "Yes, like my daughter has seen the cigar-shaped aircraft at all." Like she'll
Yeah.
probably like just put it in the back of her mind or think that like whatever the little girl drew was just some fake thing from her imagination.
Yeah. That's true. I'm pretty sure I have plenty of drawings and stuff that my mom never saw that just end up in the trash. So it would be
Yeah.
hard, yeah, to go back and say, yes, this drawing existed on this day. But that's what, they found someone who said, yes, when I was little, I drew this, and we were in a cabin nearby. But you can't say for fact because it wasn't at the time,
Yeah, that's true. It's evidence, but like not like
not
highly valuable.
contemporaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what have official reports been able to conclude? Basically, that something unusual occurred, but that is unexplainable.
And
So
I don't
the
like that.
yeah,
I don't like that. Like, there's all of this evidence out here, and their only conclusion to say it's unexplainable.
yeah. So the Canadian Royal Mounted Police officially case unsolved. The United States Air Force officially case unsolved. Canadian Department of National Defense case unsolved. So it's just like that's why we say we know something happened, but we don't know what. So I feel like it's a big deal if they can't, even if they can't say, oh, he faked it. I feel like that's a big deal
Mhm.
because it's just like, well, if he didn't fake it, then what happened? Like that is creepy.
Yeah, yeah. Like, especially with the whole like medical conclusion about him, like diagnosis, like they could not conclude anything. Like, if he had, I guess, tried to make this a hoax and contaminate something and make himself sick, like I'm sure it would lead back to something, not to something that is, I'm sorry, like we can't diagnose you.
Yeah, that's true. I feel like, okay, if they could say 100% the little girl's drawing is legitimate, then
Mm,
I would 100% believe this guy's story, and I would also believe that I think that it was aliens because we don't have craft like that.
yeah.
But right now, I'm probably like a 70 to 80%. I think it was aliens. I think that's a heavy lean. If 50% is
Mm,
like 50-50, I'm a
yeah,
heavy lean towards aliens.
that's a C. And that's passing, so. And
Yes.
80% as this is a believable story.
Yeah, I think it's a believable story. I don't think he had anything to gain. I think he lost. I think probably also like he was ridiculed and it just caused a lot more stuff, a lot more problems in his life.
Hmm, hmm.
And he never even said it was aliens. So just him saying I saw potentially a special secret military aircraft, people didn't believe him and it still caused him a lot of problems. So,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I think that's it for today's episode.
Yes, I
Thank you
think
again,
so.
Bob, for your personal story. Okay, listeners also send us your stories if you have them. We want to hear them. We want to hear everything. Send us reviews too. We want feedback. Follow
Yes.
us on Instagram, Uncontroversial Facts Only, Twitter, Uncont Facts Only. Email us, uncontroversialfactsonly@gmail.com.
Hmm.
And yeah, everything. Send it to us.
Yes, let us know if, we should start talking about something else that you're more interested in. Maybe you have a lead onto a top story that we could ourselves take a look at. Or, maybe you don't like how I laugh and you can let me know. So I can stop. I mean, I'm not going to stop laughing, but like I'll be more aware.
We'll do a hater mail section.
True. I'm just gonna mark you as hater. I'm just kidding. We love all listeners, so but
Yes.
mostly our supporters.
Yes. On our Instagram, I just want to say to promote more, we post more funny kind of content. So follow us there if you want to see more funny stuff.
True. Like us photoshopped into alien pictures and stuff.
Yes.
And we'll also be like dropping hints and like previews to our next episodes on there. So if you
Yes.
want to stay up to date
Yes.
also, that could be
Yeah.
a good area. Okay, well, I
Hmm.
think that's it for this episode. And thank you again for your continued support. We know, it's been a while since our last episode, but from now on, it should be more consistent. Thank
Yes.
you, and we'll
Thank
see
you.
you in episode 4. Bye.
Bye.